Let's keep working on our responsive layout. This time adding another breakpoint and another media query which is going to respond to tablets. So, in the last lecture we introduced a breakpoint at 1200 pixels, so around here, and so we fixed our design basically at that screen width. So here now everything looks good, and let's actually zoom out a little bit so we can see like everything at once. So again, here everything looks good, but of course a media query should not work at just one specific point. So instead, as a rule of thumb, I would say that a media query should work over a range of at least 200 or 300 pixels. Now, right? So as I had already mentioned, we should not like add a media query every 50 pixels to fix every single design problem that appears as we scale down the page. And so let's now go down maybe 300 pixels to 900 and analyze what our design looks like and if we need to fix something here. So first of all, this heading here now went into 4 lines. So this doesn't look really good. And overall, there is not really a lot space here anymore in this hero section to have this content here on one side and the image on another side. Also down here we see that these logos are way too big at this point and they're really cramped together. So there's not really enough space here for separation. Then, here also this title now moved into 2 lines, and so that makes it so that this card on the left side is bigger than this one. So that's not ideal as well. Then here again we have that problem that there's not enough width basically to fit this content here on the left side. And so we should fix that as well. And yeah, here also this image is looking now a bit too narrow, and probably we could also make this here now wider. So these input fields, they also look a little bit too small to me at this point. So it's time now to make some of the things here basically move into just one column. For example, here we could switch from these 2 columns to just one, and I would say we should do the same thing also here in the hero. And so let's now find the exact breakpoint where we are going to do all that. So let's see here. So here, at least this part still looks okay. And so I think I will go with a width where this here breaks into another line. So something like 940 pixels. So let's go back and add that new media query right here. So add media max width. And now let's again do that calculation. So 940 divided by 16. And let's round this one to 59M. And so that would be 59 times 16. So 944 pixels, which is perfect. So 59M. And let's again add some comment here, just so we also know what these values here actually mean, because 59M is not really that intuitive. So 944 pixels, and let's say that this one here is more for tablets. So we're still kind of thinking about devices here, but also using, of course, our design to really see where the design breaks and not simply use blindly something like 900 pixels. So instead, our design breaks something around here, and so that's where we put our breakpoint. But anyway, let's now scale down the value of 1 rem even more to basically make the entire design a bit smaller here once again. So that's exactly, remember, what we did here previously, right? So now here at this width, 1 rem is 9 pixel, and so now let's move that to even smaller at 8 pixels. All right. So here we will want the font size to be 50%. And that's of course because 8 pixels, which is our target, divided by 16 pixels is 0.5, which is 50%. All right. So that immediately will have some impact right there. And I think I need to reload the page here. Yeah. So that immediately fixes some of the things here. But again, the media query cannot just work at this width, but it needs to work like maybe at least until here. And so here, of course, this doesn't look acceptable anymore, right? And so now at this breakpoint that we are working at currently, we need to do some of the changes that I just talked about at the very beginning. So first of all, let's turn this hero section here into just one column, and then it will essentially become one of these other types of hero sections that we saw before in our layout lecture, where the content here is on top and centered, and then below that there is some image. And so that will then be this image right here. So let's do that. And so let's of course start by checking our current code so that we can then change that. So here we have our hero section, and we have those 2 columns because of this line of code right here, right? And so now changing that to just one column is very, very easy. So I'm just copying this now. Okay, so that is the original, and changing that to just one column is as simple as doing this, right? So let's check that out, and it is already working. Now this image here is huge and way too huge, but you saw that it was very easy indeed to simply change the layout here to a 1-column layout, right? And that's once again because of the power of CSS Grid. It makes it really, really easy to design responsive layouts because of that. Now anyway, let's start by fixing the image here, which again is way too big. So that's the hero image, which currently has 100% of width. So let's take that down to something like 60%. And that is a lot better. So it still looks quite big here, but remember that we also need to account for smaller width. For example, something like this. And so I think that for now it looks good this way. But of course, now we need to center everything here. So let's see what we have here. So we have, let's see the HTML. That's actually a bit simpler. So here is our hero section. And remember that the 2 columns are this hero text box and this hero image box right here. And so we can basically set text align to center in both of them. And that should then, center all the text content and even the image content in there. Because an image is an inline element, and so it is also affected by text align center. So let's try that. So hero text box, and the same with hero image box. All right, let's see. And that already looks a bit better. And now we just need to make the same thing happening here. And also what I'm seeing here is that this content is way too wide. So like this, it doesn't look good at all, right? So with this huge line here, and then just one word down here. So we need to add a lot more padding here to make this look a lot more natural. So we're going to do that and also try to center this content right here. So that content right there is this delivered meals. All right. So let's check that. And this one here is actually a flex container. So here things are going to work a bit different. So not with text align center, but we can still do it. So delivered meals. And now how do we center content using Flexbox? Well, that's just justify content set to center, right? And now here about that spacing in the hero. So let's see what the padding is currently. So we have this here, 3.2, just like in the container, remember? But let's increase that to a lot, something like 80 pixels. And let's see. Okay, beautiful. That's looking really nice. Now here there's just a bit too much space. So let's actually reduce that. And let's figure out what the spacing is here actually. So that should be exactly the gap here. So right now in the hero, we have a gap of 4.8, but I think we should use a little bit more space here. So let's actually increase that. So we decreased this gap in the previous media query, but that was because it was a horizontal gap. But now vertically, we need a little bit more here clearly. And so let's basically put it back up. So let's fix that spacing here and here. Basically moving this one more up because of our visual hierarchy. So this content belongs more to this one here than to the image. Okay. So our delivered meals right now is has a margin top of 8 rem. So that's really a lot. So let's move that to 3.2 rem. And then about that gap here, let's maybe change that to 6.4. So moving it back up one step from 4.8. Okay, beautiful. That looks extremely nice, I think. And even down to these smaller widths like this, right? So I like this part. So let's move on in our page, kind of like at this width here. And the next thing I said we were going to fix is these logos here. So they are a bit too big and the spacing between them is getting too small. And so let's simply make them a little bit smaller. So that shouldn't be too hard. So we just need this selector right here. And so one step down from 3.2 rem is 24 pixels. So just like this. Okay, so that's looking better. And we can also tone down the size of this text here a little bit. So that's maybe also looking a bit too huge now. So that's the step number. So here it is. And indeed, the font size is very big. And so the next step below that is 7.4 rem. All right, then let's keep going here. And here everything looks good still at this point. But remember that the media query needs to work across like at least 200 pixels, right? So we set our breakpoint at 950 or 40. And so here, at least it should still look okay. So at 800, right? But again, here we now have that problem of this text moving into another line. Let's make it a bit bigger just to see it better. And indeed, we can see that our spacing inside this card might be a little bit too big, right? So this hasn't really yet adapted to our new layout, so to our kind of more a narrow and less spacey layout. And so let's fix that right now. So just moving down here in our original code, that padding is coming from here, right? So again, just grabbing that and then moving each of these here one step down. So from 32 to 2.4 and the other ones to 3.2. 2 and just one more. Okay. Beautiful. So that fixed it, and the spacing here now looks a bit more in line with the rest of the content. Okay, moving down a little bit further here. So here it's now also time to basically turn all this into just one column. So basically one column for this content here, and then another column below that for this gallery. So once again, that should be quite easy to do. So let's move down here. And so here is where that layout is defined, right? So in these grid template columns. Now we could also try to play around with these two values here, maybe trying to make the gallery even more narrow, but I think it's time to actually just move it to a one column layout. So section testimonials. And here we have a small typo. So grid template columns, and again, just setting everything to 1 FR, which of course could be any other value, but like this, it will simply be transformed into one column. So that works, but now this will look terrible, right? Because these images are way too big. So we have a huge gallery here because it only has 2 columns. But that is once again very, very easy to fix. So right now, let's actually try a layout where the gallery is wider than it is high. So maybe even instead of having a 2x6, we can have a 6x2. So 6 columns with just 2 rows. So that's here at gallery. But I think we actually already did that at some point. Yeah, right here. So here we changed it to just having 2 columns. And so now let's change it to 6. So let's see. Oh, beautiful. So that looks amazing. So really, really cool. We could have gone for maybe a 4x3. Let's try that also. All right, but now it actually takes up too much content, and even more so at our original breakpoint right here. So I think that the gallery like this is a little bit too big, and so let's really go with 6 columns. But you see how easy it is to simply change the entire layout of all this here by simply changing one single value in the CSS. So that's really just amazing what we can do with CSS Grid. So let's keep analyzing here at this width. So just inspecting once again, everything is perfect here, I would say, except for the navigation maybe, but that we will think about a bit later. And so moving down here, this one here also still looks okay, I think, even though this one moved into 2 lines. But the alternative would be to make these ones here now like 100% of the width, and then I think they would become a bit too large, so a bit too wide. Now what we can do is to add some line height here to these list items. And that we will do not just, of course, in the media query, but simply in general. So no matter what screen width in this list, there should be some line height. So I think it should be, well, apparently it's more here at the end. So here, let's try a line height and more of a smaller one like 1.2. And that looks already a little bit more friendly. So 1.2, I'm not sure if we had used that already. Oh yeah, so medium 1.2, and so that's the one that we're going for now. And also let's add the one that we have been using a lot. So let's call it large 1.8 since we're here. Okay, so that is now also fixed. Now here, there's not a lot that we can change because we already changed the gap of the columns here. So I'm leaving it like this for now, but then here again, it's time to at least make this form here into just one column and maybe give some more size to this image here. So now it is very narrow and it looks a bit unnatural like this. So let's start by fixing that. So yeah, so that's right here in the CTA section. And the width of that image is basically defined here by this grid, right? So we have now basically 2/3 for the content and 1/3 for the image, right? Let me just write that down here. So we have 2 and 3 because 2 plus 1 is 3. So the total is basically 3 parts. And so 2 of that, which is 66.6%, and then the other one is 1 and 3, which is 33.3%. All right. But now if we wanted to change that more to like a 60-40 ratio, we could simply do this. So dot CTA. And so if we change this here to 3 and to 2, then we would have a total of 5. And so then we would have 3 and 5, which is a 60%. And of course, 2 and 5 is 40%. So this will look a little bit better, hopefully. And yeah, so that's nice. But now again, here, this is way too narrow. And so let's make this into just one column. So that should be defined by some other grid property. Yeah, right here. So this CTA form right here and grid template columns, just one FR. Giving that a save, and that looks quite good, right? Now the entire thing here just became a bit bigger, but that's not a problem at all. Here the spacing just looks slightly off. So let's see if we can add some margin there. Let's see what we have actually here. And I think that button is indeed here. So this file is getting a little bit big to easily find our things, but well, we could split it up even further, but that would then at some point also be unmanageable having all these files. Anyway, here is our button for the form. Let's just add some margin there. So margin to the top of maybe 1.2 rem. And yeah, that looks better here because now the spacing seems to be the same, at least somehow, between these form elements and the button. All right. So I think that this looks nice. So even here at this breakpoint, let's go even a bit more down. So 750 approximately, and still everything looks acceptable at least. So probably around here is where we will have our next breakpoint. But yeah, so here it's again in 2 lines. And so yeah, we're going to fix that soon. But for now, it is time to think about the navigation here. So at this point here, I think it is time to actually start our mobile navigation. So having a navigation where all of this here is basically hidden in some panel that opens up once you click on the menu button. So I'm sure that is something you have seen all the time, and this is what we will do in the next lecture.